You like shocking people a lot.
That's all right. I don't mean to. I mean to speak. You always say I'm interested in the truth. Well, when I was a kid, I met Einstein. And I said, do you believe in God? He said, which one?
Here, the analytical and skeptical mindset of Einstein is cutting up Fresco's young conscience of a god into smaller pieces by suggesting there are several gods to believe in, and that the concept of God is something you will find outside yourself. This behavior is typical for the unconscious mind of a scientist, the one who thinks knowledge is something that comes from outside the human mind.
Then I said, well, do you believe in truth? He said, what do you mean by truth? That certain things are so. He says, like what? He pinned me down. He wouldn't let me get away with language.
This time, Einstein is avoiding the real question, and seriously asks himself what truth really is, and he puts the evidentiary burden on the young mind of Fresco to explain what truth is. Then, Fresco is convinced that language isn't the way of explaining things in the real world. This is probably because of Einstein's way of making him mute.
I said, well, this is smooth. He says, you really believe that, don't you? I said, yes, I do. And he put it under a microscope, and it looked rough. So I said, is that what it's really like? He said, we cannot see things as they really are, only as our receptors. You can't see the craters of the moon unless you look at a telescope, because your receptors don't pick it up.
Here, Fresco is sensing something as a smooth surface. He's using both his sense of touch and his sense of sight to recognize. Einstein is using his analytical mindset to split this recognition into focus on only one sense, by convincing Fresco to only trust the magnified eyesight, and leave out his own conscience and insight.
There are radio waves crossing this room. You can't sense them. There are germs on the table. With a microscope you can. So humans, they use the word higher consciousness. You can't be conscious unless you had variable receptors.
This time, Fresco is, in his own conviction of the world, only focusing on what he can see by his own eyesight, and the analytical and skeptical mindset of the secular world has once again splitted a natural conscience and mentally blinded a natural insight into only trust the secular science and its ungodly methods of denying the abstract part of the world.
Do you know what I mean by that?
What's a variable receptor?
Microscope, telescope,
Okay.
magnetometers, different instruments to sense things you can't sense.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, Fresco is mentioning instruments that are used by secular science to magnify the sense of eyesight, to prove some thing's existence in the physical universe. This magnifying of eyesight is now seriously put to test by quantum mechanics.
So when people say, the way I see the world is the way it is, that's ridiculous. We can't.
Well, here Fresco has misinterpreted the word world to exclude its most important content: the natural human and its natural mind.
We can only see it dependent on the quality of our receptors and background.
Well.
Here, Fresco is excluding the natural way to obtain knowledge, the ability to see through insight, and really understand the world he's living in. Fresco does not understand his own belief in secular science, nor his trust to the magnified eyesight. It is sad to see what secular scientists are doing to the mind of the young in the secular part of the world today. Jacque Fresco could have had a brilliant creative and critical mindset that would have overcome the analytical and skeptical mindset in the secular world. But his mind was overthrown by a nitwitted and immature being